Welcome back to another episode of Reusable Space Program. You find our little exploration team on the surface of the moon looking around, and they've got a lot of journeying to do because, well, they're going to continue their journey until some of that mining equipment arrives, and it's going to be a while. Let's get going. So, while our mining equipment is flying off to the moon, we're going to need a tanker craft because hopefully we're going to start producing some juicy fuel in the moon, and we're going to need to transport it around. Primarily it's going to need to go around the moon area, but it's also going to need to come back to Kerbin, because if we're going to build anything around Kerbin, we're going to need fuel for it, and it's going to be a lot easier to get it from the moon than it is from Kerbin. So this is our orbital tanker. We've taken on board some of the design concepts of the X5 and things like that. You can see it's got a nuclear engine at its base. It's got a little fairing there because it was to help its aerodynamics. However, that's going to stay on because, well, we can't get rid of it. It's got a docking port on the nose, a standard size one, and that's pretty much what it's going to do. It's going to be our on-orbit fuel tank supply transport thing. It's got 2 nuclear engines. It's got the ability to go pretty much everywhere around the Kerbin system. I would hazard a guess and say it's probably got enough delta V to go to most places in the solar system if we really needed it to, or we could stick something else up. So, obviously, we need to probably refuel the orbital tanker as well, because it needs to get to the moon. So we're going to send up one of our local fuel tanks. Hopefully this is one of the last ones we're going to have to send up, because it's a lot of effort to send these things up, and you don't get the vast amounts of fuel from them in the end anyway. So we're going to have to try and rendezvous this craft with our tanker craft. However, we've got to do it before the moon train gets into capture position around the moon. So in reality, it was actually a race against time here. I actually in real life had about, I think it was about 10 minutes or 5 minutes, I have to check, to actually do this docking once we got into sort of close proximity. And so this was I had to be slick. We were trying to basically line this up and do it before the moon train arrived in the moon's sphere of influence. However, it got into the sphere of influence before we got to start the docking. So we figured out, right, when are we going to hit the periaps? How long have we got? We need to put a marker down. We need to know when we need to do that burn. So here we go. We're going to put our marker down, figure out how long that burn's going to take, when it's going to be. We're going to stick it into our little thing there, and that's going to give us timings for just how much time we've got. So now we're going to jump back to Kerbin, and you can see on the screen there we have, it looked a lot until you start realizing we've got to spin around the planet to actually do the maneuver. So we're now going to do our maneuver to bring us into proximity of the tanker, which is the first part of this process. And you can see top left hand corner there, the clock is starting to tick down. It's not terrible at the moment. We've got like an hour. It's fine. An hour on orbit is fine. On Kerbin, that's breezy, isn't it? So here we go. We're going to, oh dear, that's the other side of the planet we've got to go to. Okay, so now we're down to in the 40 minutes period. That's fine. We're still fine. The problem is if we don't catch the moon train, it'll fly beyond the moon, and then that becomes problematic because it's a problem. Equally, if we don't do this docking right now, it's going to drift further and further apart, and then we lose fuel. So we don't actually, both of these are quite important. I think if we had to fail one, this is the one that I want to fail, the docking. So we've got a bit of time to do this. We've got in the 30 minutes. 30 minutes to do a dock is easy, once you're nearby. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, we spin round, we just approach, and we're going hard for this one. We are basically rushing in. I had done a lot of docking at this point in basically one sitting, and this was the culmination of just getting used to docking, I think. So we did that, we brought that into normal, we prepared itself, and then we jump over, and the tanker is the one that's going to do the actual dock. So we just bring it over, and you know what, we're just going to fire it as hard as I can. We're going to use a lot of the RCS. The RCS on this is reasonably balanced, but of course it's difficult because balancing it independent of what fuel's on board is not the easiest thing. So we just bring it in there, and you can see the clock is ticking down, and you can see, you know, we've used a couple of minutes up just to bring us into near sort of alignment right now. And at this point I'm actually feeling really confident, because once you get to this point, particularly when you're looking at the nav ball and you can see the target coming into position, and you're like, yeah, okay, I can, there we go, and then you start playing around. You can see there I've now lined up, and boom, that was quick. That was a beautiful little docking there. And then I even had time to do some fuel transfer, because you know what, I've got ages now until this moon train arrives. Superb. Moon train. What moon train? Undock that. I did think at this point about, shall I just return that craft, or shall I leave it in orbit? You know what, we're going to return it because we've got time. So we jump back to the moon train, and it's still got loads of time. So it's basically going to fast forward a little bit to its time there. It's got, you know, 20 minutes or whatever. We had loads of time for this. And then it's going to align itself to its prograde marker. It's going to slow itself down. Not a massive burn, you know. This isn't like real solar system. This is an easy little sort of process. And we're into orbit around the moon. We're in a highly inclined orbit. So what we're going to do is, right, we're going to try and put ourselves onto the same plane as our space station's like congregation that's occurred in the orbit there. So we're going to put ourselves on the target, and yeah, we're gonna speed along until we get nearer time for that, and then we're going to be ready to rock and roll, as it were. So that's going to come along. We've got a little bit of time there. Fix our inclination. Wonderful. And of course, there we go. Now, while we're waiting for it to come back around so that it can change its apoaps and periaps, our little team down on the surface, they're doing some more exploration. They're just going along, and they've come across a cliff. In fact, I was actually quite lucky, because I was going at speed at this point, and I slowed down because I was looking elsewhere. And yeah, I got a little nervous when I started to put the brakes on here, and it started to tip. So yeah, massive crater compared to what we've seen so far. So this was really cool. So we're just going to back off ever so carefully, and I think we're going to go around the outside of the crater. I don't think we need to. I did consider going into it, but I think we'll have a look at it. We'll do a little bit of research, and then we'll go around the outside of it. Okay, right. Now for our biggest load into space so far. This is, I believe, one of our largest, biggest loads that we're going to send up, because we could have sent this thing up as 2 loads, and I decided, you know what, I think the X5 has got the capability to take this whole thing in. So again, that first stage, it's got parachutes. It's gonna fire. It's gonna land down. You've seen it come down before. We've done the dry run earlier on in the season, so you can see that it does that. This craft really struggled to get up. Actually, it was using a lot more fuel than normal. We've actually often had a lot of fuel left in these craft. It made it, and it had enough, you know, fuel. And once this thing is up, because it's so light, the return fuel is nothing. But there you go. You can actually see what it is. This is our power unit and our command unit. That's going to be sent up in addition to what we've already sent up for our Moon base area. And that's basically so we can have a crewed area and a power supply to run all of our stuff, because those mining rigs take a lot. So we've got thermal control systems, we've got power supply systems. Not the best in the world, but it should give us what we need. And there we go. And here we go. To get that to the moon, we're going to send up cargo 4. Don't ask what happened to cargo 3. We've got cargo 1 and cargo 2 that are pretty much around the moon right now. Or one of them's about to be, you know, around the moon. Yeah, this cargo 3 we started to design, and then we had a bit of a rethink. Cargo 3 will probably come back in the future, but this is cargo 2. Cargo 2 is different to cargo 1 and cargo 3 or 4 is different to cargo 1 and 2 because it has fixed engines. So when it launched, its engines were aerodynamic. As best we could be. It also had to fire at certain times, otherwise the whole stack collapses. It is a bit of a bigger beast, shall we say. It uses the same sort of design philosophy as our tanker, in that we've got that, and you're going to see it in a second when we decouple it. It's got basically its docking node there with a shroud around it, and its tanks in amongst there. And then we've got this little thing here that's the smallest section possible of our craft. So we have our fuel tanker, it's going to prepare itself, and it's heading off to the moon. So there we go, that's nice. So the tanker's going to head off to the moon, so now we've got some tankerage going there, and we're going to need that fuel because we're going to need to land all of these things, and we're not the fullest on fuel at the moment around the moon. Hopefully we will actually get to a point very soon where we don't have to do this anymore. We could get fuel coming back the other way, in which point I'm going to have to start putting up fuel tanks in orbit of Kerbin to actually start being refueled. So we're going to have to think about that. If anybody wants to send me some designs for a fuel storage depot around Kerbin, that would be really great. Cargo 4, obviously it could go straight to the moon, but it's actually going to go and collect its payload. And yes, you are probably guessed what it's going to do right now. It's going to go and find the command unit and the power unit, and it's going to take them. That's its job. Of course, once it gets them on, how they get down is going to be interesting. But we'll talk about that anyway in the future. So Cargo 4, this was one of my slowest. I was trying to basically save as much fuel as possible at this point. I could have forced this thing, but it actually took multiple revolutions until I got to a nice point for a docking, and even then it wasn't the best one ever. So we just bring it in, and one of the reasons we've got fixed engines on this is because it gives us that extra stability, particularly for heavy loads. This is just a more stable craft. It's more balanced and it's more stable. It's probably my preferred craft. It does not have the flexibility of the other two though. With not being able to change its engine configuration, it is not as flexible. So this is the sort of craft that we might put on an interplanetary ship or something like that as maybe a drive unit that could then have a second functionality. The other two would be very much always utility craft. And so that's where we're going. We're trying to think about now, long term, what can these craft be used for? So here we go. This is going to be a nice docking, is it? I can't remember. As I say, I've done a lot of docking at this point in the series, and there we go. Bump-de-bump. It was sloppy, but also very rapid. So our moon tanker has now arrived at the moon. Our moon tanker has arrived at the moon, and we're going to quickly circularize it because it's we've got stuff to do. We've got lots of stuff to do around the moon right now. We've got a lot of mass around the moon in different bits. We've got the station there with all of its stuff on it, with the lander on there. We've got the explorer down on the surface. We've got the moon train is now in orbit waiting for its circularization point so that it can actually have an interaction. We did actually on the previous docking have a bit of an overrun on the Kerbal alarm clock, and I'm not entirely sure why. And because of that, this moon tanker was actually bearing down on the moon. So whereas the train one, we could see the time difference, this one we actually did miss the timer on it, which was a problem at the time because I thought if this thing misses it, we've wasted all the effort we've done fueling it up. And we also potentially could have cost ourselves a tanker. So you can see we've actually gone past the best place really for this burn. Anyway, we're going to bring it in, and again, we're trying to make sure that all of our craft are, and you can see there we've actually got the moon train as well now that's in orbit, and we've circularized that orbit just off camera. I cut out showing that because there's so many different bits to show. And then here we are with Cargo 4, and it's now going to plan its departure because it wants to go to the moon as well. So we're now getting a critical mass of material around the moon. At some point we're going to have to put it down on the surface. And so yeah, this one is just going to burn away, and it's got actually a lot of delta V, although, let me put it this way, it's got a lot of fuel. It does not have a vast amount of delta V. I would like it if it had more, considering how much fuel it's got on board. However, it's carrying a very heavy load. This is a big amount of material. The material that's already on the moon tank, the moon bus that went, or train that went over there, is actually more. It's a heavier craft, but this is one load just attached, and you can see it wobbling away there. It burns quite considerably as it's going along. So this is our next moon train, I suppose. Moon train 2, moon train 3, I don't know. We should really get a special moon train craft. In fact, that's maybe something we need to invest in the future instead of just using our landers for this. But the design is nice because we can tow things behind it. So we'll put up another cargo 4 and turn it to cargo 3, but turn it into train 1 or something, and it can just do that. Maybe that's a good idea. Yeah, we can get 2 of those and use them for these things. Hey, we can reuse our designs as well as our craft. That's a brilliant idea, and then we don't have to keep redesigning things. So we're just going to slowly thrust it into a reasonable approach. We were actually aiming to put it into an orbit that's sort of just outside of that the station at the moment, so that we can then bring it in for docking. And the idea is that we have this outer docking node that we're actually we're an outer orbit. So back on the surface, yeah, we're having a good look at this this crater, and we're all set for next time. You know, next time we're going to have all these things arriving from space. We're going to have to figure out what to do with them. We're going to have to dock them. We're going to have to get some stuff down onto the surface, and these exploration guys are going to have to tell us exactly where they want it to go. So from me and from Isaac, until next time, have a great one.